What's up, guys? So Plarium finally did something to nerf Polymorph, and it definitely isn't what I was hoping for it to be, but let's look at this update and I will give you my opinions about what will be better options to nerf or rebalance Polymorph. But what the update says is that currently many arena teams rely on Polymorph to discourage landing debuffs on them or stripping their buffs. While this limitation was the original purpose of Polymorph, we see that its restricting impact is much higher than we planned. Therefore, we are going to introduce the following change. A champion's accuracy will start affecting their chances to transform an opponent into a sheep, unless the Polymorph is upgraded to 6th level. The blessing stat bonuses and the chances to apply Polymorph are going to remain the same. We will provide a free blessing reset after the specified rebalance. So basically they are going to do the same thing that they did to Brimstone, but the issue here is that Polymorph is very different than Brimstone because the other one is for PvE content and this one is for PvP content. And the obvious issue that many players will see from this is that it will nerf the people that don't have 6-star blessing, but it will actually not do anything for the players that do have 6-star blessings. And of course, all of the players, not just the whales, but especially the big spenders, they will already have them at 6-star, and everybody will eventually have their supports at 6-star. So basically this does nothing to actually change Polymorph in the game. Now everybody doesn't have 6-star blessings just yet, and most people will not have them, but in the Platinum Arena and even in Gold Arena, many players will do, and eventually most people will have them, so this basically does nothing for the endgame players. The main issue with Polymorph is that it can interrupt all of the skills, including the debuffs and the damage. So let's say that you're using something like Ramandu. If enemy procs Polymorph when he's buff stripping them, then he will not buff strip anybody in their team after that in team order, and he will also not place the block passive debuff skill on them. And of course that makes it so that debuff skills are practically never used in arena because it's very inconsistent and you will often lose fights because of it. Back in the day, everybody used to use a buff stripper in their offense team. It was either Ramandu, Ceres or Kaimar, but in almost every single fight people would use buff strippers, and they were too good. It made it so that the fights often lasted for 5 to 10 seconds and there was hardly any counterplay against beat teams. And in that sense, I thought that Polymorph was actually pretty good update, but of course it had other consequences, like people are not able to counter Taras and Maritska or Harima, because Ramandu is basically not usable. So many people would consider nerfing Polymorph as an indirect way to nerf Taras and Maritska, which desperately need to get nerfed in this game. And I think both of them should be nerfed, or I don't think Polymorph necessarily needs to get a direct nerf, though that is possible, but it needs to have some counterplay against it, so more like indirect nerf. But Taras and Maritska still definitely do need direct nerfs, and I will make a separate video about it. But I was actually thinking about this topic, and there is 5 ideas that I would have that would be a good way to nerf Polymorph. And the first one would be an item set, and that would be so that, let's say that it works like protection, that 4 piece it's 1 turn and 6 piece it's 2 turns. And what it would do is make your debuffer immune to Polymorph for 1 to 2 turns. This would make it so that you can use buff strippers like Kaimar or Ceres at the start of the fight, but they will not be completely overshadowing everything else in the game, and they will have ways to be countered. And if you have to use a 4-piece or 6-piece set to consistently land debuffs on the enemy, then you will lose a lot of accuracy and speed, which will make it so that there will be ways to counter it and play against it. You will not be able to be 350 speed and have 800 accuracy, and you need to decide which one you want to focus, and maybe people can use resistance teams in defense and use strategies that right now aren't worth considering. Now, another simple way that I saw many mention in the content creator chat is that you could simply have cleanse work against Polymorph. Let's say that I use Ukko and I use the A2 and put block buffs on enemy team, but my Ukko also gets polymorphed because of it. And then I have a Python in my team who has cleanse, and maybe he wouldn't even lose a single turn if I'm able to time the cleanse correctly. This would add a lot of room for strategy and new kinds of teams, and people would have to think about their options and actions, and I think it would make the game a lot more interesting for everybody. Now, another option would be basically do what they are doing right now, but also make it require accuracy at 6 stars. I don't think Polymorph requiring accuracy is a bad idea and something that couldn't be considered, but it should also work like that on 6 star and not only outside of 6 star, because that will of course be unbelievably unfair and it won't fix anything with Polymorph. But even if they make it so that you require accuracy, that doesn't mean that you can't use Polymorph. First of all, many supports will build accuracy anyway, and in general, your champions will not be incredibly high resistance. Let's say my Duchess here, who isn't built for resistance, is at 250. So let's say that my champion with Polymorph would be around 200 plus. It would have a good chance to be able to polymorph a champion with this kind of resistance. And you could easily add this kind of amount of accuracy to your supports if you wanted to, but it would also give some options and reasons to maybe build champions at medium resistance and go for 400 resistance, something that right now doesn't really have any reason for you to build, but it would add more strategy and options into the game. Then my fourth idea how you could counter Polymorph is that simply make it not interrupt skills. How it works right now is that so has a chance of placing sheep debuff on enemy whenever they place debuffs on this champion or removes or steal buffs from them. So it will work for every instance of buff removal or debuff placement, and that means that something like Madame Ceres that removes buffs from enemies, then places decrease attack, and then places decrease defense. All of these have a chance to proc Polymorph, and if it procs on any one of these, then it will interrupt the skills and anything will not happen after that. So let's say that Madame Ceres does her A3, and the second champion in the enemy team procs Polymorph on the buff removal part. That means that the other champions after that will not get buffs removed, and nobody will get decrease attack or decrease defense on them. And that of course makes it very inconsistent and not worth gambling on right now. But if they made it so that even if your champion gets polymorphed, he will still do the skill and it will not be interrupted, that would mean that it would be viable to use debuff champions. But there would still be consequences and it wouldn't be completely safe and easy to use it. And the final option, the fifth one that I had in mind, is that right now if we go to the blessings, there is basically one more blessing tree that is hidden, and maybe they are planning to add one more of these, and maybe they could make a blessing that has some kind of mechanic that will counter Polymorph. Maybe it would work the way that I mentioned, they could make an item set, or maybe it could work in some other way, but they could make a blessing to counter Polymorph. And that's my 5 ideas how you could counter Polymorph. Of course, I'm very personally invested in this because I'm an arena player and I care about PvP, and I'm not a big spender, so I actually happened to get my first 6-star blessing today. And if you're super ultra endgame player that clears all of the content, then you will get pretty much one champion with 6-star blessing every year. I think maybe there's like 4 months left of a year since we got blessings, but basically you will get like 1 or 1.5 6-star blessings per year. And that's assuming that you farm the Iron Twins every day and you clear all of the events and you don't buy any soul essences with your tokens, so it isn't that easy. But basically you can get 1 to 1.5 per year. But of course, if we look at the top players, then they will have a bit more than one champion with 6-star blessing. And right now you will see many players with Necret or UDK that they have purposefully left that 5-star so that they will not get 10 speed from the blessing. And that will definitely change after this update. All of these big spenders will definitely go for 6-star, which they might have been avoiding doing up to this point. Of course, I'm not happy with this update at all, and I think there is much better ways for Plarium to nerf Polymorph, which I think should get nerfed, but it could be also indirect nerf, or it just could be a flat out nerf. But I hope that since they announced the update and aren't planning to implement it yet, maybe they are trying to gauge the audience opinions. So yeah, maybe if you give them a feedback, they might consider it. I wouldn't have my hopes up, but I will still do it just in case, and that's why I wanted to make this video with actual constructive ideas that you could use to nerf Polymorph with. But yeah, that's it for this video, and see ya.